Good morning. Welcome to Unity on the Avenue. If you've never been here before, we welcome you. And if you're watching online, we welcome you. And if you're here in person, we welcome you as well. So this song, the first time I heard it, it really resonated with me because I feel like there's so much knowledge that if we stay quiet and we listen, we hear sometimes even our own voice tell us what we need to learn or what we need to hear in that moment. So if you would, you could sing along with me. Thanks to Ken making the slide for us. It's in every one of us to be wise. Find your heart, open up both your eyes. We can all know everything without ever knowing how. It's in every one of us here and now.
Welcome on behalf of all of the congregation of Unity on the Avenue, wherever they are in this moment. And one of the things we always want to tell you is that everyone is welcome here. There's nobody who could walk in the door that would not be absolutely loved and accepted for who they are. Also, I want to honor May Lynn, our very own singer, songwriter, performer. What else can I say about you?
Teacher, speaker.
Teacher, speaker, okay. All those things are part of who May Lynn is, and she blesses us with her music when she comes. I invite you all to join with me in Unity's statement of faith. There is only one power and one presence in the universe and in my life, God, the good, omnipotent.
Surely the presence of God is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of God is in this place. Surely the presence of God is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of God is in this place.
Please join me. I want you to take in a strong, healthy breath and take your thoughts from your mind down into your heart chakra. Think of all the things that have caused you worry, stress, and unhappiness before this day began. Forgive it, release it, and exhale the gratitude and the thankfulness that we have, knowing that Spirit is in us and with us as we seek guidance on how to continue to let go and let God. We know that we are blessed. We know that we are a blessing to this world. We have faith that all that we do will be guided by Spirit, for we live in Spirit's mindset. Our imagination is large enough as the universe so that not only can we forgive ourselves for our own faults, but we will have the strength to be able to forgive all that we feel that might have caused us harm in any way. We give thanks for the Lenten season. We have spring equinox, the high holy days of the beginning of a new season of life. If we be still in our heart, we can feel the omnipresent vibrations of love in us, around us, through us, and we can send it into the cosmos, blessing and loving all that we see, all that we know, all that we feel. Let us relax in knowing that we are always one with Spirit, and Spirit will help us continue to grow and expand into the ever-present goodness that we were made from. And we give thanks, and we are thankful for this beautiful day, for this present moment of love and the generous abundance of all that Spirit gives us. We are thankful, and so it is.
Beautiful. All right, today is a Janice Stanfield Day, if you know who that is. I'm doing a couple of different songs of hers today. And this first one is self-explanatory. If I could look down on this path I've walked from somewhere way up high, I could see the crooked road that I have come. I have walked a mile in sorrow, I've walked a mile with joy. Now I'm less afraid of either one. For every tear I've cried, there's a smile that I have earned. For every mile I've walked, there's a lesson I've learned. I am not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying, though I may not know where I'm going. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. Some people choose to live their lives on quiet avenues, while others find a place in the parade. Some, like me, are seekers. We take less traveled roads, believing we can find a better way. And though I get discouraged, I won't be turning back. I have joy as my compass, faith as my map. I am not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying, though I may not know where I'm going. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. All of us are headed for the same destination, so why not blaze the trail that's got imagination? I am not lost, I am exploring. Life is an adventure worth enjoying, though I may not know where I'm going. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. I am not lost, I am exploring. Oh.
Perfect. I love it. We're not any of us lost, and we're all of us exploring and discovering where we are in this moment. So the question that I would like to chat with you about this morning is Lent. So last week we finished our series on Sermon on the Mount. We talked about the Lord's Prayer. We talked about how our experience of traditional church has affected us at this point in our life. What do we still remember with great fondness? What do we remember in not such fond ways? Whatever has been your experience of church. And now I would like to apply that same sort of question to the experience of Lent. Now, depending on your tradition, Lent was a big deal. You may have gone to church, you may have gotten ashes on your forehead, you may have always given up something for Lent. I, on the other hand, was raised Southern Baptist, and I never even heard the word once. Never knew what Lent was about, had never even thought about Lent. The very first sort of Easter season service that I ever attended was a Good Friday service with my aunt in a Methodist church. So anything that happened prior to Good Friday, I never experienced. So I'm curious what your experience of Lent is and what you would be willing to share. Is it something that was important in your childhood, in your growing up? Or are you like me? You were Lent virgins. You had never heard of Lent. Somebody wave at me because I'm coming. Who would like to talk about Lent? Oh, wow. All right, Eustaine. I can always count on you.
Okay, well, I had a really interesting background as a child. I went to a Baptist church, not Southern Baptist, but just regular Baptist. They didn't talk about Lent much at all. But my mother was a Catholic. She was Catholic for generations. And so I knew about Lent, and I knew about a lot of those traditions. So I had a strange upbringing with two, and so I had the Baptist influence, I had the metaphysical influence from my father, and then I had the Catholic. So I was a mixed up kid.
So how did you feel about Lent?
Oh, I was very interested in it because my mother was very interested in it.
Oh.
And she would give something up. We had fish on a lot of Fridays. Most Fridays we very seldom had any meat on a Friday. So, but at Lent we always gave up something, and the desserts weren't as plentiful. She made dessert all the time, and they weren't plentiful during Lent.
Somebody else, Lent. How did you deal with Lent?
The week of Passover, etc., and the Last Supper began to have great meaning for me. And, Monday, Thursday, I've done several ceremonies around that, and reading the Gospel of John when Jesus is with his disciples. It just, touched me deeply. And I don't see Lent as anything that makes me not give something up, but it makes me conscious.
Thanks, Wanda.
I did. I grew up in the Episcopal Church. And yes, Lent was very much a big deal in the Episcopal Church. And every part of the year was a season there. And Lent was an important one. So I knew about Lent, and I knew you were supposed to give something up for Lent, and it was marking, preparing for Easter and all of that. But my parents were, while we went to church, we didn't mark it at home with any kind of sacrifice. We just went on our daily business. But yes, I was aware of it, and but it was not a big deal in my daily life.
My name's Rick. Can you hear me?
Thank Rick. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it.
I was raised in a little Presbyterian church in upstate New York. So the only thing I heard about Lent was somebody was lending somebody some money or something along that line. So I really didn't learn about it till I was well into college when I had some Catholic friends. And my law partner, right now, he's Catholic. And I remember one of the first days I saw him during the Lent period. He came in. He had something on his forehead, and I go, Jim, what's on your forehead? I mean, that's how stupid I was about it. And the other thing I remember, I went to undergrad at St. Lawrence University, and I always wondered back then, and I never took the time to learn, why they had so much fish on Friday. That's seriously my extent of knowledge of Lent.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. I have to tell you that I had never seen anyone with ashes on their forehead either. And the very first time I saw someone, I did the same thing. I said, there's something on your forehead. So those of us who didn't grow up with that tradition, that was a big surprise when we saw someone with ashes. Linda.
I grew up without going to church and was totally unaware of Lent during high school and college. But my first introduction to the fact that there even was Lent is when I went to be in the Peace Corps in the West Indies, and the emphasis there was Carnival. So I saw all the celebrating before the Lent started, but I wasn't that aware of what transpired the rest of the season. So that was sort of a first introduction that there even was such a thing.
That's true. Fat Tuesday comes before Lent.
Yeah.
And a good
And
good
lots-
time to party.
Lots of celebrating, big time.
Big time. Anybody else have some Lent memories? Do you see how this is a quote, a holiday, a ritual that is observed, and yet many of us don't have a clue what's going on. We're totally, about the whole thing. So that's kind of what I was interested in.
I was raised in the Lutheran church. We did celebrate Lent. It was usually not necessarily giving up something, but being very aware of what Jesus was going through before Palm Sunday. So we had the stories of the disciples being afraid on the water and Jesus coming towards them. They think it's a ghost on the Sea of Galilee. And the story of Peter saying, well, if Jesus can do it, I can do it. And he got onto the water and took a couple steps and ended up being fearful and had to have Jesus save him from drowning. And the business with Ash Wednesday, definitely Carnival on Fat Tuesday, and then Ash Wednesday. I mean, you party, hardy, and then Wednesday morning you show up and say, oh, forgive me for all my good partying, let me start repenting for what I've done. And you put ashes on your forehead to show your penitence. And my granddaughter felt really sorry for the folks on this Ash Wednesday, because what else was going on that day? It was another holiday that we were supposed to be happy about. I don't even recall what it was. But the fact that something was supposed to be given up to have your repentance and your penance before the actual crucifixion of Jesus was a little bit beyond my understanding. but the stories of what he did, removing himself to pray and once again doing as many miracles and marvelous things as he possibly could because he knew what was coming, was very interesting to me. Jesus knew what was up while everybody else was going, tell us more, tell us more. And when we finally got to the weekend of Jesus's Garden of Gethsemane praying and all that kind of stuff was deeply ingrained to me, whether I completely understood it or not.
Okay. So actually what Donalyn is talking about in terms of Jesus's life before the crucifixion, before resurrection, this is sort of the direction I'm going this morning. So the idea is Jesus lived an ordinary life for about 30 years. His father was a carpenter. His earthly father was a carpenter. And being a good Jewish boy, we know that he went to the temple. We know that he studied. We know that Jewish men of that era actually were literate, so we know that he probably read. But we don't really know what he was doing. Most of us lived a life like that. You know, most of us arrived in a unity church later in life, not being raised in unity, and we show up here because there's something calling us. We don't even know why. So I've told you all that I was Southern Baptist for my whole teenage years. I was in church with my mother, but at 16 I made the decision to go and sin, and I did a fine job. I want you to know that. And my first husband was Catholic, so I learned a little bit about Catholicism on the way, but I have 3 children, none of whom were baptized, none of whom ever did I particularly take to church. We showed up sometimes on Christmas and Easter along with the hordes that come at that time, but I didn't go to church. I wasn't even remotely interested in anything that had to do with church. And then in the early 80s, there was a TV show that was on that I watched, and I'm guessing some of you might have watched it. Joseph Campbell, does that ring a bell with anyone? The Power of the Myth. I was interested in that. Here it was on, quote, primetime television in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I lived at the time. And I was fascinated to listen to this gentle, wise man talking about the power that is in myth. And now he wasn't particularly talking about the Bible, but he was talking about the spiritual aspects of all myths, that they contain a deeper truth than just mere physical facts. Shortly, maybe a year, I'd have to research it more than I did, there was another series on TV that some of you might have watched. It was with an actress whose name was Shirley MacLaine, and it was Out on a Limb. And I and my former husband were fascinated by what she was talking about. I still see her standing on the beach yelling, "I am God." Well, now we think we're all divine, but we don't quite practice it in that way. However, I was totally captivated. And Craig and I discovered something we had never even noticed before called metaphysical bookstores. And we went into those metaphysical bookstores just like Shirley MacLaine did and looked for the books that were speaking to us. Do you remember that she's standing there and one falls off a shelf at her? So Craig and I were on a journey to discover these books. And we went to a group That acronym was REST, Reaching for Enlightenment and Spiritual Tranquility. This was in Erie, Pennsylvania, in a Unitarian, not Unity, church, met once a month. Now, some of the people who went to that group, and we had things like near-death experiences and all that kind of stuff. Some of those people went to something called a Unity church. Some of them were spiritualists. Craig and I weren't too sure about any of those people because we weren't too sure about the whole group. And the Unity church met in the basement of a shopping center. And I was not going into the basement of a shopping center with these weirdo people. True, I swear to God. The woman who was the minister there ended up being one of my teachers at seminary, but I didn't know that at the time. So we never went to Unity, and the universe arranged. See, when you're following steps, it's not, you look at that path. You can't see what's around that corner. You just follow the path. And sometimes you don't even know that you're following a path. Well, due to a strike at the Kaiser factory in Erie, Pennsylvania, Craig and I ended up moving to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And we discovered down there, because we were geared this way, a metaphysical bookstore. We went into the metaphysical bookstore, and there was yoga classes. I had done yoga in Cleveland, but in Erie, there were no yoga classes. And guess where the yoga class met? They were above ground, though. They were in a strip mall. And I could look in the window, and I didn't see any blood stains or anything on the wall, so I figured it's safe to go in there and do yoga. Now, it sounds funny when I tell it, and I'm, obviously I have a spin that I'm putting on it, but it was the truth. I really was hesitant to go into the basement of that when I didn't go to church, period. After about 3 weeks of doing yoga classes in the Unity Church, Craig and I decided to go to that church on Sunday because it was in Arkansas, and we figured we needed to take our kids to church somehow because it's the buckle of the Bible Belt, and we didn't want them to be discriminated against. But we didn't take our children in case it was too weird. We didn't want to expose our kids to any of this weird stuff. We cried through the whole service. And here I am. Now, that's not a linear path. So what kind of a path would you imagine that Jesus was on? He was a good Jewish boy. Our Christian myth assigns the whole business about Christmas and Bethlehem and virgin births that didn't have anything to do with Jesus' own experience. He was a Jewish carpenter who suddenly was called to do something that he would never have guessed he was going to do. Lent is not a word you can find in the Bible. I don't care which translation you're looking for it in, you're not going to find the word Lent. However, do you remember how many days there are in Lent? 40. And you remember what 40 means metaphysically? As long as it takes. Our journey takes as long as it takes. There isn't a right or wrong way to this, folks. It doesn't matter if I didn't walk into a Unity church until I was in my late 40s, or if you didn't walk into a Unity church until you were in your 60s. It doesn't matter. Because we each have our own individual path. And our path leads to, you can pick a word. Does your path lead to resurrection? Does it lead to enlightenment? Does it lead to second-tier consciousness? Where does that lead? And the truth is, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. It can take you 40 days. It can take you 40 years. It can take you 40 centuries. we're all going to end up in the right and perfect place. There's no alternative. But what our journey looks like on the way, that's the part that we get to choose. We get to discover, we get to live into. So, that's the journey that we're on this morning. And the journey begins with a single step. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So how long it takes you is a totally individual matter. There's not a requirement on it. When we talk about Lent itself, Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, said the only thing we ever need to fast from, the only thing we ever need to give up is negative thinking. The power of our thoughts, that's what changes our life. Doris isn't here to tell you these are what you have to think. But if you look at the results you have in your own life, whatever that might be, your life as it looks today is the result of what you've been thinking all of your life. The good things, yay. The not so good things, we all have those. We all have that experience. So the root word of the word Lent itself is simply springtime. And it is. Springtime in Denver, springtime in the Rockies, springtime in the East. So how we came to celebrate Lent the way we do has some relation to the lengthening of days. The beginning of Lent, in case you're interested, is always halfway between the winter solstice and the spring solstice, halfway in between. So we're at that beginning point. And it was celebrated by the ancient Celts, there you go, Clyde, long before Christianity hit the land in terms of it being in between. So Jesus was actually, quote, born about 60 years after Rome had conquered the whole region of what is now known as Israel. Over Jesus' lifetime, the region was divided into 3 separate countries, each with its own government. The Jewish governments under the Romans were semi-independent. In Judea, where Jerusalem is located, there was a Roman governor, but the day-to-day administration was actually in the hands of a prominent Jewish citizen. In Galilee, where Jesus lived, the ruler was Herod Antipas, and he had to pay an annual tribute to Rome. He also had to support the Roman policies and the military actions and maintain public order in his territory. In return, the Romans protected him and his territory from invasions by other countries. So when you put yourself back in the history of the times that Jesus was born into, and when you look at how the country was ruled, and then you look at Jesus's 3-year brief ministry, you kind of see what he was setting himself up for in terms of traveling around, attracting crowds, and teaching the way he was teaching. You can see that he was headed for trouble just because he was doing what he was doing. So sometimes being called contains identifiable hazards on your path. Now, those of us in the United States today, we don't have a lot of hazards. If you choose to be spiritual, If you choose to go stand on a street corner on a soapbox and preach, you can do that. Now, if you attract huge thousands of people, crowds, and you're blocking traffic, the police may come. But do you see how our own environment allows us to practice our spirituality in the way that we choose? The times that Jesus was living in, that he was born into, was a different set. Rulers had to be very careful. The slightest sign of political upheaval seemed very dangerous to them. Any popular charismatic preacher was a potential threat, and that's why at the beginning of Jesus' career, Herod had John the Baptist. Do you remember this guy, the one who baptized Jesus? Absolutely. Say it louder. What happened to John the Baptist, Penny? He was beheaded. So he baptized Jesus. Jesus heads for the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, as long as he needed to be there. And while he was in the wilderness, John the Baptist had his head cut off. And it wasn't until Jesus comes back from the wilderness that he began to teach and preach. So when you think about the environment in which Jesus was teaching, and what is he teaching? In a sense, it's radical. Love your neighbor, love your enemy, do good to those that persecute you, all those things that we've been studying in the Sermon on the Mount was what Jesus was teaching. And while today we go, oh yeah, ha ha ha, that was radical stuff. And in some environments in our country in this moment, it's still considered radical stuff. So, even though Jesus was a carpenter, like I said, Jews were literate at this time. About the age of 30, Jesus became John the Baptist's disciple. He followed him and studied from him. So then, what Jesus began to do was talk about God from his own experience. Most of the teachers in that time were teaching what other people said. It's honestly one of the reasons I like to sit in a circle and let you talk. What I say isn't as important as the epiphanies that you have, and you're quite apt to get an epiphany from what someone else says as much as you would get one from what I say as the minister, because you have an expectation that I, as the minister, am going to say certain things. It's my job. You pay me to say them. But when you hear them from other people, it's different than when I say it, because then you know, well, that's coming from their own experience. So remember, in the time when Jesus was teaching, there weren't any hospitals. There weren't really any doctors. There weren't any insane asylums. So people who were sick were simply cared for in the community. They were cared for at home. And the cures, when they happened, seemed miraculous, because people had not seen people healed by their own faith, by their own power of thought. Jesus didn't say, I'm going to heal you. Jesus said, your faith has made you whole. Do you see what I mean? If you believe you're cured, you can be cured. You can be whole. So that's part of what Jesus was doing that led up to what we call Holy Week, what we call the season before Jesus was crucified. Jesus also taught using parables. he taught with stories, because you're more apt to remember my telling you how I came to be a minister by being afraid to go in the basement with those weirdo folks. You're more apt to remember that story than you are anything else I say. I have learned long and hard that stories about my own life are usually much more remembered, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, than some of the people that I quote. So when Jesus said that if your faith is like a mustard seed, now I've passed out mustard seeds in the past. A mustard seed is a really tiny little seed. It's kind of yellow and it's almost infinitesimal. And yet what grows from that, it's actually a shrub, but it looks like a tree. It's huge. So Jesus said, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you can be healed. Do you believe that it's possible? If you don't believe it's possible, it isn't going to happen. All the Western medicine in the world can only fix so much. But we have the power for wholeness. Jesus was teaching in a living room one time. One of the stories that I remember that I always like is that people crawled up on the roof. Think about Israeli houses. They were all flat, made out of mud bricks in that time. They removed some of the roof, lowered the sick person down in the midst of the living room so that Jesus could heal him. That took work, energy, belief, and the person was healed. Your faith is what heals you. So Donaldin talked about some parables. What are your favorite parables out of your time in church? What did you remember the most? Which parable? You can just shout. You don't have to tell us the whole parable, but which parable?
The Good Samaritan.
The Good Samaritan. Go to the other side of the road, O you holy people, and don't heal, versus I'm going to pick him up, take him with me, put him in the inn, and pay to have him cared for. What? The prodigal son. Even if you have, I was thinking of words you don't say in church, that kind of a child, and they behave in that way, if they come back to you, you're always delighted to have them back. You always accept them and love them. What other parable do you like? Too bad, Jesus, they don't like any of them. It's okay. Some people like the lost sheep and the coin. Some people, I actually wrote down the prodigal son and the Good Samaritan for my own prompt, so you know you hit mine. But so the Sermon on the Mount is a collection of the most important things that Jesus taught. That one, I think it's two chapters and I can't remember how many verses. That's it. That's what he taught. So next week, we'll think about that further. Right now, I invite you to take a breath. To just relax in your chair. And notice where you are on your own journey. Begin with knowing there's no wrong place. Right now, in this very moment, you are in the right and perfect place. Doesn't matter if you got up late this morning because the time changed. Doesn't matter if you haven't filed your taxes. Doesn't matter if you were unkind to your pets before you left your house. Doesn't matter if you haven't called your mom. Simply breathe into the place that you are in this very moment. Notice what your journey has been like to come to this moment. Have you really been seeking for years? Days? Did the journey start today? And wherever we are on our journey, in this moment today, we are in the right and perfect place to take the next step. The step that is only ours to take. It need not be a public step. It is an interior step. To explore, to notice, to search for truth. Truth as you know truth. Knowing that truth can come from the Bible, can come from the Tao. It can come from a traveling Buddhist monk. Any interior struggles that we have are honestly with ourselves, not with the universe. Take the steps that you're guided to take and leave the ones that aren't calling to you. Breathing into the awareness that is simply yours. There is no exterior judge. Our friends' opinions don't matter. Our family's opinions don't matter. The support of a community is valuable. Most of us find that support to be useful. But again, it is not required. What is required is an honest journey with yourself, a journey guided in steps, a journey guided in moments, we listen, we learn, and we release the thoughts and beliefs that no longer serve us. They may have been infinitely valuable. They got you to this time and this place. But are they of service going forward? Again, that's only a question that each of us can answer individually. So we breathe into that awareness. We breathe into the journey. And we know that at the end of our 40 days, we will have accomplished all that we were meant to do. We journey forward together, and we are grateful for the support that we have. So we simply say thank you. Thank you. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. We are one now, 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 we are one now.
This is the time where you have an opportunity to share with Unity on the Avenue. I know that many of you are consistent givers and give in regular ways. Some of you choose to actually write checks and give cash, and there's a square in the back. So all of those things work. We are grateful for your gifts, however it is you give them. Thank you. I invite you to join me in our offertory affirmation. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive.
You will do amazing things with the choice each new day brings, and with every step you take, bless the progress that you make, the reason you live is there in every gift you give. Love your life, love your dreams, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Oh, the places you will go, and the people you will know. Don't worry when or where or how. You don't need to know that now. You're on the right track. No need to look ahead or back. Just enjoy what this day brings. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You don't have to work it out. Just stay in the here and now. Let your mind rest for a little while. Sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So close your eyes, take a breath, and smile. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things.
All kinds of things are possible. So we usually bless our children at this time. None of them are in the room, but you're here and you all have an inner child. And so we're going to bless you and our children. I invite you to rub your hands together, generate some energy, and join me. Children, you are loved, special, and important. We see you and bless the divine being that you are. And our prayer for protection. Please join me. The light of God surrounds us. I am that light. The love of God enfolds us. I am that love. The power of God protects us. I am that power. The presence of God watches over us. I am that presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Please join us downstairs for lunch. We have plenty of lunch, and there are not so many of you, so you can eat a lot.